Today we will be talking about money multiplier effect and measuring money. So in the last video, we talked a little bit about the creation of money and the tools that the Fed and other banks use to achieve this goal. But today we're going to look a little bit closer at the money multiplier and its effect on money. The money multiplier is a tool that many entities use, and it is a way to tell how much money should be injected into the economy based on the recent recessions or inflationary periods. But it's also a way to predict what these injections and what these incursions will do once they are in the economy. So we have the formula there, and that is 1 over 1 minus MPC, or marginal propensity to consume. So there are a few caveats when we're talking about money multipliers, and a few things you got to keep in mind, because there's a few ways that the number can be thrown off a bit. And one of these ways is when banks keep excess reserves. If a bank keeps excess reserves, then the money multiplier will naturally sink. And the reason for that is that when the government invests or the Fed buys bonds from these banks, the assumption is that the money continues out into the general public. However, the banks will hold on to, and by law are required to hold on to, some of it and keep it in the reserves. And so, of course, that's going to change the money multiplier effect a little bit. So, for example, if the Fed buys back bonds for $1,000, the banks have to keep a 10% reserve requirement, and they're only going to lend out $900 worth of that $1,000. And so the number that MPC is going to be multiplied by is going to be lower. It's going to be $900 instead of $1,000. But of course, that can fluctuate on a case-to-case basis, as talked about in class. There are different reserve requirements that, there's not different reserve requirements, but banks keep different reserves, and there's a little bit of diversity in how much they choose to keep on hand. So now we're going to move into money measure. And the first category of money measure is M1. So M1 is going to consist of the easily liquidable stuff. So that's going to be all sorts of checks and things like that, of that number. They're outside the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. And I mean, it's kind of easy to see why, because banks aren't going to keep a check, they're going to cash the check. The next measure is M2, and the M2 is really pretty simple. It's going to include everything that was in M1, so all those checks, everything that is easily liquidable, and then it's going to add coinage. If you have a wallet while you're watching this, or you have your wallet on you, it's going to include everything in that. The only caveat to that is that it will not include any type of credit or credit cards. And so that brings us to our last measure, and that will be, hard money. And so hard money are things that are backed up by a physical, material worth. So for example, like gold. The dollar for a very long time would have been a good example of this. Of course, it's not anymore because Nixon took us off the gold standard, but that's besides the point. It is anything that has material worth attached to it. And so that's all I have for y'all.